Thank you for your participation as a spiritual community, as a sangha. That means community. And what language is that? Sanskrit. Traditionally, the topic is between absolute truth, relative truth. The Tibetans call it kunzup and dundum, just Tibetan words. And then in the Sanskrit, I'm just saying these to show you how much I know. Smart. That's all the Tibetan I know. And Samvri Satya, Paramartha Satya means relative being and ultimate being. So, and I'm going to call the talk, or have already, is the way we know things. How do we know something? Relative knowledge is what most of the world is run on, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, life and death, should do it, shouldn't do it, who's right, who's wrong. And a lot of that because our ego mind is so sensitive, but to being wrong or to looking bad or being embarrassed, we tend to, some people clamp down on something so tight, they would never come to a meeting like this because their beliefs are so intense that they won't allow themselves because they don't want to really know, they just want to believe. That's a relative kind of knowing. They just want to believe in their deity or their higher power or their all of that. Is that incorrect? No, it's relatively, it is correct. That is a way to do it. But what happens if a person is completely wound up in what they think is true and what they think is false, using the thought process, they're only going to have a half a life. They're going to live part of their life, but they're going to miss something. They're going to miss the totality of their life because they're covering up what is coming towards them by fear. Got to get away from that. I have to go and talk to this person, talk to that person, or change this whole direction, modify it, correct it, fix it. Quite often therapy is worked that way. And again, it's not wrong. It's a way of working with someone who's suffering greatly. They may not be ready for this kind of a practice, which you've just been doing for an hour or more. Not everybody is ready to do this. It's a very powerful, subjective practice of working with the mind where you are going to understand what this is. You're not just going to believe me or believe the Buddha or believe anybody. You do it yourself. You actually see this yourself. It just takes a long time of looking at what? The things you believe, the things you disbelieve, what you think is right, what you think is wrong, relative truth. In the relative truth, we all agree, that's a sound. Unless you can't hear, then we might have some difficulty there. Or if you can't see, we'd have some difficulty there. Or if your thinking process is somehow limited through culture, through how you've been treated when you were born, how you've been maybe even abused, that whole area may be severely compromised or shut down. Also, by being in an environment that is extremely loving and warm and supportive and is totally about helping you, sometimes called parenting, good parenting, helping you out, helping you deal with your difficulties, not necessarily beating you up when you don't function correctly as they wish you to. So it's very, very complicated. One of the ways to simplify it is, and here again, I'm pushing this a little bit. I'm not trying to get you to believe in Buddhism or join Buddhism. There's nothing to join. If you understand what Buddhism is, it's not the conventional understanding of a religious faith or practice. Much different. One of the ways it's characterized is it is non-theistic. So there's no deity at the head, even though it certainly looks like there is. This is a chunk of wood. Pretty interesting, though. But we need some kind of a reference point. So we bow to the Buddha. You're not bowing to a god or a deity. You're bowing to your own enlightened nature, which is what the Buddha stumbled into 2,500 years ago when he saw his true nature and began to share that with others. Slowly, over a long period of time, lineages of teaching began to develop, and which you're looking at a situation here where two lineages, the Sokuzan lineage of Japan through Dogen Zenji from the 13th century, and the Karma Kagyu lineage from ancient Tibet through various Tibetan teachers, including my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Comes together. Here we are. This is a monastery in the middle of, where are we? It's called the hand map, huh?
Your hometown.
My hometown. Yes, I was born about 10 blocks from here. So relative truth, ultimate truth. Relative truth is everywhere. If it's taught, you can go and study relative truth right down here at the university or K College. You can go into whatever, sociology, botany, biology, forestry, and all the other things that are offered there. And you can actually study with people who are working in that area who have a lot of knowledge, and they can confer a degree on you so that you can go on and work in that field or possibly teach. Very strong idea there of relative emphasis on that relative. There is some areas there where it might get into more ultimate understanding. Don't necessarily have to go into that unless there are questions around it. So the ultimate understanding from the point of view of the spiritual path, which is a path that transcends the relative world without leaving it behind. I'll say it again. It transcends, it goes beyond the relative, but it doesn't ignore gravity. It doesn't ignore pain and pleasure, the nerve endings. It doesn't ignore anything. In fact, in fiction, it includes everything. You no longer are shutting anything out of your mind stream or your living room for that matter. That doesn't mean you unlock your doors and everybody gets to come in. I'm not talking about some kind of stupid idealism. You know what I'm talking about. What am I talking about? Fundamental sanity, where you're no longer at war with anyone. And if you're at war here, this is an example I've used lately, and I'll use it again today. If you're at war here and you don't know about it, and you project that war out on the world, then you'll think that the wars in other countries and so on are seen through your lens. And what I would say, if you want to know how to work with the war, shall I say it? I don't want to get too political. Gaza, find the Gaza here. Look at the war here, because if you haven't looked at this war, and if this war is raging when you go out and try to work with it in the world, I don't care how good your intentions are, it will be very difficult to separate the interior war that you're trying to hide out from and the war that's out there, which you might have a tendency to project onto and then try to fix that war instead of coming to an understanding of this war. Everyone is doing their own version of this. Am I accusing you of something? No, I'm probably wrong. I've just been looking at it for a long time. Relative truth, ultimate truth. Very important. The minute you pull your finger out of the holster, you know what I'm talking about. Blame anybody else. This is relative truth, and it is blaming. That's the worst thing you can do, is even though somebody did something to you, abused you, hurt you, said something, was disrespectful, the minute you blame them, you buy into this world of relative truth. You have left the spiritual path, maybe only for 10 minutes. You have to see what this is, my friends, hopefully. You have to see it. If you see it, then you'll know what to do. And there won't be any path that anyone can tell you, including this person, can tell you what to do. You will know what to do. What this person will do, if I meet you, I will encourage you to find that path yourself. I won't try to get you to be a monk. I might even say, don't do that. Go do something else. Go join the Peace Corps. Or what's that other thing? Not the Peace Corps. Oh, that's right, the military. I won't tell you to do that. And I can speak from experience. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. So I'm not just some kind of against that. And my father was killed in World War II in Germany. So I have a little bit of understanding of what happens in that area. And I'm not against it. It's a relative world. We need some kind of protection from people who are completely off their rocker and are going to take their uninspected fear on you or on your family. You see it everywhere in the news. You can't just, laws will help somewhat, but they won't address the fundamental the fundamental problem, which is mistaken identity. There's no solid being here. Don't believe anything I say. Consider it, think about it, reflect on it. Spend 2 or 3 years reflecting on that. If you can, sit down and face the wall so nothing else is coming up other than what I just said to you. I can continue or I can take some questions, but if you have questions, that's what I'd like. Go ahead, sir.
What is the function of understanding?
The function of understanding is that you, if you understand, you do not have a question about that. You see it, you understand what it is relatively. You understand that fire is hot, water is wet, or gets things wet. Wind moves. I saw that. Nod, nod, wink, wink. Did somebody tell you that water is not wet, but it gets close? I actually received that instruction from, how old was Ani when he told me that?
Like 14.
Yeah, her son, who's now at going to U of M, actually made that comment. I think he was sitting right over here, wasn't he?
He was down in the White Talk in like the community room.
Oh, he was, yeah.
Yeah, in front of everybody.
Yeah. It's very embarrassing. Corrected by it. So going back to your question, ultimate knowledge is you have no questions. Relative knowledge, you can still have questions because you can't know everything relatively, but you can know ultimately. This is called wisdom. And there's no being who's wise. There's just wisdom. If wisdom sees wisdom, there isn't anything else. The duality is gone. It is completely gone. There's no polarity anymore. Even though you run into people who are polarized and are at war with themselves or with others and are full of hatred, you meet them where they're at. This doesn't mean you follow them around or somehow capitulate to their insanity, but you know how to work with them. More about it if you haven't.
Geez, does relative understanding inherently cover up fundamental intelligence?
No, it doesn't. It can take up space there. Someone can spend their whole life just doing lawn care and getting very, very good at understanding ways to work with grass that's in the shade that doesn't grow so well in the sun. All of the relative things there, and they spend their whole life. They get money. They feed their family. They grow old, and they maybe retire and move to Alaska? No, probably Florida. Or they work and work and work, and they can't stop working because that fills up their time and makes them feel valuable. People are looking for happiness and value, and you can't. What is that song? Looking for love in all the wrong places. You can't find it elsewhere. That's the only place you can find it. That's the only place you can find understanding. You can't be given understanding by anyone, by any Dharma teacher, by any minister, by any philosopher, by any therapist, by any mother, father. You can't. You have to see it. If you're lucky, you will run into people that will encourage you to see it for yourself. Not something you believe. It's something you understand more.
Geez, I'm thinking particularly of like a situation where I feel uncertain or fearful, and I go to something like astrology for some kind of foothold. And I wonder if that's just covering up the difficulty, if there's a better way for me to work with that.
I wouldn't say it's covering it up, but I would say, everyone is different. It's very situational. If someone were asking me that and they were sincere and they really wanted a response from me, they weren't just, fooling around, really wanted a response, and they did not meditate, and they just wanted to figure out their life with astrology or numerology or tarot cards or any number of things, then it would depend on them. If they were ready to hear it, I would say include some meditation practice. In that you're someone who meditates a lot. You're a fully ordained monk, so you're not going to be particularly hindered by the study of astrology. That being said, your awareness practice should let you know the area that you're covering things. I already know. I watch you cover up things every day, but I don't have permission to tell you about them, and you know that, don't you?
A little bit.
A whole bunch. If you don't mind me embarrassing you right in front of all these young people. Although you're not so old yourself, old man. Aren't you 29 or something? You're not going to tell me? He's 34. 33, so yeah, made him older than he was. So. Okay. Yes, is there a question over here? You just broke combing your hair back?
Yes.
See, I can't do that. Anytime I see anyone do that, I immediately get jealous. So do you have a question about anything that's been said? Anyone? Yes, please.
Well, first of all, when I ask a question, is there any specific way you'd like me to ask it? Like starting off, I noticed this guy started off by saying something.
Yeah, people, you don't have to. I mean, you're a guest here, so you could just raise your hand, ask your question. But traditionally, as we study, in order so people can kind of interrupt each other when convenient, or when someone has a question, they'll say, like he said, what was your name again? Sokuzan, which means Freedom Mountain. You never know. You would say, Sokuzan bowing. And then I probably would not, I'm the teacher, so I probably wouldn't necessarily respond. It would depend on who it was. So if you had a question, you could say, what is your name? Allison. You'd say Allison bowing. And you wouldn't have to necessarily bow, but if you say that, then I know that you have a question. Go ahead.
Well, my question was, with wisdom, is there a part of wisdom where there's acceptance in knowing that you won't know everything?
Very good question. So a little bit of that, it's just that wisdom, as its fundamental, the ultimate understanding, there's no knower, there's no personality who knows, there's just consciousness, as it says in that. It says perception only, there's no perceiver, there's no one over here, and there's nothing being perceived. But the perception still goes on. It's just that what you see, you're not separate from. So therefore, everywhere you look, you see yourself. And you don't see your mundane identity, like who you are, how you're treated, and you have a bad temper, or you don't have a bad temper, and all of the descriptions we have of personality. Personality is gone. At the same time, if that person who sees in this way functions as a teacher, then they will take on personality, any kind of personality, to be able to teach and help others. More?
Can I ask what you're holding?
This is a stick. This is called a kotsu, and it's carved by, this is presented to me by my Dharma heir, Jason, and it's curved and it symbolizes,
I've heard it talked about as both the spine or the tongue of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. No, you can't do that with it. So, and also if it's a ceremonial thing, if you're teaching, the curve goes this way, you hold it this way, or if you're bowing, if it's a service or a ceremony, then it would go the other way around. You would use it that way. You have a further question? Anyone else? Anywhere at all? Yes, sir.
Yes. Sorry, this might be a tad off topic, but you were talking about like relative and absolute knowledge. It kind of got me thinking a little bit about Descartes and some of. I'm just kind of curious. How would you conceptualize like the mind in like relation to the self and the body?
They're the same, but then we divide them up because what? Ego, self-centeredness. The leaders, the teachers want control. Control and power. That's what everybody's actually after, mostly white guys. Not always. There's other people that are saying, not white, I'm not a guy, but I like some of this power. And so they find a way to do that politically or manipulating people's fears and beliefs. Yes, miss.
Well, please bear with me as I find a way to phrase this.
All right.
I suppose, is there any ideal way then to present outwardly if you were looking for like within inner peace? Is it outwardly presenting as you feel comfortable or outwardly presenting in any?
Here, I'm hearing you. So the best way to outwardly present is less is better. All these senses, the eyes don't produce sights. The nose does not produce fragrances or smells. The mouth, even though talking is here, the taste doesn't produce flavors. The hand doesn't produce touch. There's an interaction between all the senses that seems like that, but basically it's the mind that jumps on and tells you what you're smelling, tasting, hearing, doing, thinking, feeling, and describes it. So there's what's called an outflow there. So less is better. This is why when we sit down, sit in a symmetrical posture, and then watch the asymmetry of the mind go this way and go that way. And eventually that begins to slow down. There's no guarantee, but it slows down so that when your outward expression, when you get up and go into your everyday life situation, there's less likelihood that you're going to start producing things out of your ideas or your hopes or your fears about it. And there's more of a likelihood that you're going to really meet others where they're at and see, even though they might not be treating you so well, you see that that's coming out of fear, that they don't even know they're afraid. Because they cover it up with their aggression or their opinions, their ideas, their judgments, and their beliefs. More? Good question. So I would say, what was your name?
Hannes.
Again, please.
Hannes.
Hannah?
Tanis.
Can you spell
Tanis.
T-A?
Nis.
Tanis. Thank you, Tanis. So insofar as you can, to come back to your question, receive. If you're just on receive, then you won't do much because you're receiving this incredible world. I often say, don't miss your life, covering it up with all your activities and you're doing and filling things in and busy work, but just receive. If you're doing that, then you'll be sincere with others, and you'll also see deeply into when they're acting irregular or disrespectful to you. You'll see that it's because they're afraid, they're covering it up. So you might be able to actually help them by not engaging in battle with them or warfare arguments. May I ask what your major is?
Oh, major then.
It takes some time. Yeah, I say don't do anything unless you have to. Who needs a major?
It'll probably be English, but
Oh, that will be a good one. Yes.
So going back, the Buddhists talk about hell and the hell realm and the ghost realm, and they have amazing descriptions about what that looks like.
Yes.
How do they know?
How does who know?
So Grandvine, how did the texts in the Buddhists know that that's what hell looks like?
So it's coming out of centuries and centuries of personal practice. Each individual practicing meditation under the guidance of not only the Buddha but his lineage of teachers and so on down through the centuries. It's a slow accumulation of understanding, relatively described. Excuse me, but hell, the six realms of the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, the animal realm, the human realm, the jealous God realm, and the God realm are just like states of mind. So they're just descriptions, and sometimes there seem to make some sense, and other times they don't. They don't make some sense. Is there some specific area, or is it just you want to know how they know that?
So Grandvine, it was Ani's question. It was Ani's question.
Okay.
And it was a very descriptive picture of pitchforks and burning hell and a certain number of kalpas.
Yeah, and if Ani were sitting here and asking me that, and I said, well, how does it feel when you're really upset and mad? Did you have any words for that? Bad. Yeah, bad. And I say, okay, bad, but you could say that to somebody else, but it doesn't convey a lot. I just feel bad. But if you use those kinds of images, like beings who are chasing me, you know what it's like to have a nightmare, a bad dream, or create some kind of a stage play involving a lot of chaos, then you could call like any warfare. If you look at a battlefield, if you look at, I can think of all kinds of movies. If you look at movies of, say, of the Civil War, where human beings wearing different colored uniforms are clashing with each other and killing each other. That's a hell realm. Some people who have, we go into prisons. Some monks here still go into prisons. Udao is still going into to help inmates in prison. That is a highly controlled hell realm where people are kept in there and actually are tortured. Maybe not with pitchforks and knives and so on, but they're not allowed to come out of their box. They only have, some of them, depending on this position they're in, only have maybe an hour a day in the sunshine. Why would you do this to another human being who, when they were 17, screwed up and joined a gang and did some things that were illegal? Why would you take that person and put them in prison for 20 or 30 years? Control, living on right and wrong. There is no such thing as right and wrong. There is no, so those are creations of the mind in order to do what? Get control. So what do we do about that? Doesn't seem to be any way to step into the middle of the incredible landslide we call this world of cause and effect, billions of people all doing this and this and this and this, and some people in control. Don't step into the landslide. Sit down, hold still, find a space by yourself. It may not be this monastery, may not be this teacher, may not even be Buddhism, but sit down, hold still, and watch the mind. Observe confusion in the mind, rather than jump in and try to fix it or repair it. Because nothing is broken. You have to realize it. If you realize what this is, there'll be no more war with anything, including yourself. Choro.
So knowing, what does it mean when you say that there's no solid or separate being? Bowing.
So the illusion is they're here and there's someone here and there are people out here, and I'm going to go to the store, but you're going to stay here. So there's a constant separation that supplies us with an identity. If I pick up this stick, I can feel this kotsu, but you can't. But you can see me do this, so you might be able to imply or guess how this might feel in my hands using seeing, or your idea of what, maybe you picked this up before. There's just so many ways that this builds through all the six sense fields, including the mind, into some kind of speculation about the otherness. So one of the basic teachings of Buddhism is everything is empty of other. It's not something else. This is your mind. Without your mind, there is no stick, kotsu. More? I didn't even answer your question. You can let me off the hook. Yes.
So we keep talking about, or you keep talking about the fears and how like that can manifest as in like aggressiveness or just like being stuck in your opinions.
Yes.
How do you approach that? Like if I were to meet someone that was like that, how do I approach that?
Listen to them.
Okay.
No, listen to them. You use not only your ears, but use your eyes. Look at them. This may sound a little silly, but don't disconnect from anything. You have six sense fields, including the mind. Those things don't produce much, but they receive, unless the mind stream is so knotted up in fear, paranoia, that you can't even breathe, that you can't smell that someone has a body odor. That's not an evil thing. It's just true. Or maybe you smell somebody's perfume, which sometimes is worse than body odor. Know what I'm saying? So I would say meet them where they're at. Sit down with a look in their eyes and receive, listen. And so that the first 3 or 4 minutes, if you're talking to somebody, might just be them complaining about something, or they might be nosy and asking you about what's going on with you. But eventually, if they're having difficulty, eventually you'll start to hear what their life is like, and you should receive that. Some people just need to have somebody to talk to.
Going off of that, so would you say, after listening, I've heard some people say that the best way to approach that is through like compassion and asking them questions out of understanding. We're trying to understand them. Would you say that's pretty in line or something that is okay to do?
The concept of compassion tends to get in the way of actual compassion. Actual compassion, you can't describe it. It's not a feeling. If it's a feeling, then it's more like sympathy or feeling sorry for somebody, or even a little condescension that might be disguised as helping somebody. Again, your name spelling?
My name?
Spelling it?
Tanis.
Tanis. Thank you, Tanis. I'd like to hear your question.
I would love to remember my question.
I didn't expect that. Yes. You'd love to remember your question. Was it about? Oh, go ahead.
It was regarding compassion, but I forgot my second half.
Okay.
May I ask it if it comes back?
Yes, please. Yeah, just say hey. Okay. Yes, sir.
She's on mine. Compassion is talked about as one of the perfections. Could you say what is compassion from how you present it as a Buddhist?
Well, I would have to say, I don't know, Buddhists, there's a lot of Buddhists. I say receive people's suffering without fixing them. Be respectful of other people's confusion. You have to listen to them. You don't know what kind of. Go ahead.
I've got it. It'll stay.
Huh?
I've got it. It'll stay. Finish.
You sure?
Positive.
Hey, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, I was done. So coming back to it, just receive. It's so much. You don't have to do anything to be compassionate. Just sitting with someone who is in a kind of hell realm of their own creation, or has been created or caused by being around people who are unkind, and they're trying to cover up their fear by hurting others. Anytime you hear any of these shootings, this is people that are terrified, and the only way they know how to get rid of any of that is to download that fear on others, taking their lives, even though they're little children. That is a person who has had horrible, horrible hell realm in their mind stream. Let's help them. Let's not go the other way and hurt them, punish them. They need to be helped more.
I was regarding seeking advice and compassion. It is a practice within my own religion, and it seems to be one here that you don't give more than what a person seeks from you. So they may ask you questions and you respond to those questions. How is that limited by compassion, or is it just you approach that?
I think that's very good advice. We do something similar to that. Say, mind your own business is what I say. Unless somebody can say, no, I really want to know, what do you think? And you can actually having words around them with them and responding means just as much as having any content to it. You could actually respond and say, it looks like that's a very difficult situation you're in with that person. It just sounds very confusing. You could go along with maybe how they feel, but then you could also come to some kind of ending so that they can talk, saying, I'm not sure what to do. What have you been doing so far? You don't really have to turn into a therapist particularly. You could actually just listen. May I ask what your religious orientation is?
Pulling a pagan.
Pagan? Okay. Well, that's a well-grounded, if I may say so. Feet on the ground, not forgetting gravity. Buddhism is also very similar to that. It's just very, very transcendental common sense. It's just, there's no big highfalutin ideas to it. It's just simple. Is there a question? Harrison.
How do I work with finding war entertaining?
Who's asking the question?
Andrea?
Oh, okay, Andrea. How do you work with finding war entertaining?
Yes.
Enjoy it. I'm not kidding you. If it's entertaining, you don't want to cover that up. Don't cover anything up. If you actually fundamentally enjoy or see what is so thrilling or exciting or interesting about war, then that will do whatever it needs to do. It may stand on its head. It may continue for 3 months. And the most important thing I can say, since you are a student of the Buddha's Dharma, you're a student of mine, I'm saying spend a lot of time in front of the wall, watching how the mind keeps erupting in this kind of a situation over and over and over. You have to do this yourself. I'm here as a Dharma teacher, but what I'm going to say, if you bring that kind of question or any kind of question to me, I'm going to, insofar as you give me permission, turn you around and get you to go and look at it. Then you might come back in 2 days, 3 years, and ask more questions. But it is entertaining. We just watched a movie last night that is very, very all about war, but it's very entertaining, but it's also a movie. It's a movie. They'll let you show movies about murdering and killing people, chopping people's heads off, but 2 people making love, oh, that's pornography. That's not pornography. That pornography is in your mind, not on the screen. Think about it, or don't think about it.
Thank you. Bye.
More? Yes.
Beyond bowing.
I'll come back to you, Harrison, in a minute. Go ahead.
What does it mean to be genuine? And will I have an understanding if I am or I am not?
The is or isn't tends to go away because that's relative truth. You're in what's called, it used to be called no man's land, but now is no person's land. Excuse me. It's called the middle way. Buddhism is called the middle way because not too tight, not too loose. So you find yourself as a personality, as personhood, as an ego without reference points. And that you begin to make yourself comfortable in that area by not pulling, by not pushing, by not looking for something else. Passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. Those start to come apart the more you practice meditation, the more you relate to the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, the teaching, and the Sangha, or the community. More?
Beyond bowing, you use the words make yourself comfortable. How do I make myself comfortable with the area of the ego?
You're sitting right now. You're not comfortable, are you? No, but you're sitting still. It's very relevant. When I say make yourself comfortable, I'm not saying you suddenly close your eyes and curl up in a nest and go to sleep. I'm just saying that you you can work with the negativity. It'd just be another way. So you're no longer threatened. I sometimes, one of the ways that I teach is if you realize your true nature, if you realize who you are, I mean, actually who you are, your actual identity, and I'll say this very, very bluntly so you don't forget it. You won't give a shit how you feel. If you care how you feel, then you're constantly going to be covering that up by blaming others or blaming yourself or blaming your mom or blaming society. Blame. And what this does is reinforce dependent origination, the original misunderstanding, which that there are separate things that happen in a separate way and somebody caused it and somebody didn't cause it. More?
Yeah. Beyond bowing, do you think I might be able to stop pushing myself around someday?
Yes. Aren't you going to say how?
How do I?
I don't know. No, I do. I have an idea about it. If you're listening, if you're a student, then this can function as a teacher. If you stop being a student, if you start turning away and turning back into your own ideas, it's not that your own ideas might not be better than or more workable than mine or more timely than mine, but I stop teaching. The only way I can teach is if I look in your eyes or your eyes and see that there's a receiver there. Then I can say, you just have to watch the way you continue to push yourself around. It's an awareness practice, not a success practice. That being said, if you can see right into the interstices, the gaps and the fissures are in the dynamic that it tends to get very solid in your particular mind stream as I need to do this. Called stubbornness. I need to do that. I should have done this. Why did I do that? And if you can sound familiar, you have a lot of smiles there. So we tend to lecture ourselves. It's not about stopping doing that or not doing that, though it may back off. It's about seeing the incredible aggression that is happening in your own mind stream where you're going to war with yourself. This is what I address when I say, lose the war here, rather than take this war that you want to ignore and cover up and go out and find things are wrong in society and hammer people over the head with protest signs. Go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, beyond bowing, what does it mean to lose the war here?
Probably feel like a failure, feel like you're not getting any better. It could feel like things are getting worse for you, that meditation doesn't work. Sounding familiar? Well, you're also somebody, you've been here for 8 years, you've lived in this monastery? 7, off and on. Okay. And you probably meditated every day for the last week or two, when you say? Most of each day, at least what I've seen. So a lot of meditation. How's that going?
All right.
Okay. You're here, you're asking the question. So there's some kind of understanding, but it's not complete yet. And when it's complete, the questions will stop. The question, there will not be an identity anymore. And questions will begin to arise when people ask you how you do this. When you become a teacher. And you can't become a teacher unless there's a student. Anytime a teacher tries to promote themselves as a teacher, this is relative truth. It's not that they might not have something wonderful to say, but the only way you can teach ultimate truth is to have permission to teach someone. More?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Harrison.
Harrison Bowing. For those coming from other religions, how do the deities of Buddhism sort of play a role in what is considered a non-theistic religion?
Because the deity in the Buddhist approach is your own wisdom mind. It's just a way, just like this kotsu. I could just go get a stick off the ground, but instead we fashioned it, or Ian fashioned this kotsu and put a lot of work into it. So we actually make it into something so that it has some craftsmanship in it. It has beauty. Not that the stick off the ground doesn't also, but that might be more in line with another approach to spirituality, which is maybe more earth-based. So that's one area of it. The other area I would say is the deity. You're visualizing a deity like Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara in your mind, and you're doing a mantra. So you're using the speech, and you're using your mind in terms of vision, and you can't really find wisdom. You can't locate it somewhere. So we use a deity that is made up. You can either use one of the deities that are taught in whether it's a Vajrasattva or Vairocana or Samantabhadra, any kind of a deity out of especially the Tibetan tradition, where you would use that to take up the space in the mind stream that is normally occupied by all kinds of daydreams. The ego is thinking this and thinking that, but instead, if you're sitting there and you're doing a mantra, and I could do a short mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Most of you have heard of that. And you have a mala, and you run the mala through your fingers. Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme. And all the time you're doing that, you're visualizing this deity. And all the time you're doing that, you might have another part of the practice where you're actually moving your hands in a particular mudra. And you might also be the visualization you're having. There might be some kind of activity in the visualization. There may be some kind of way that you're moving your hands relative to the mantra that's being chanted, or to the actual longer part of the liturgy that describes different aspects of awakening and enlightenment, and the way those energies, passion, aggression, and ignorance, are transmuted into wisdom. So it's a very complicated area, but it's not about worshiping somebody up there. It's not about worshiping anybody. So it is about using the mind, using forms to work with the mind in a way that is very, very specific, and is something that I practice quite a bit. But I don't teach it. What I teach is sit down, hold still, and watch the mind move. I don't think you need to invent a bunch of things. Depends on the person. There's some people that I encourage to do those kinds of practices. Deity yoga, it's called. But it's not something you're believing. You're not believing in the deity. You know that what that deity represents is your wisdom mind, which is hard to locate, especially if you're looking for something. More?
Super interesting. Harrison Bowing, who do you choose needs sort of the deities? Like, how do you make a choice of which students need sort of the?
I don't make choices.
Okay.
Stop making. I don't make choice. I'm not kidding. I don't. I know what to do next. You guys, can I pick on you a little bit? Whereas you guys are doing either or. Should I move to Vermont, or should I just stay here in Michigan? Should I? He wants to go out with me. He wants to go out with me. He's got more money, but he looks nicer. He has what I'm saying is the either or thing. If the ego has been seen through, the either or situation just vanishes. You don't have to push it away. You just know, because if you don't know what to do, then you don't do anything. But you don't sit around and drive yourself. What's the word? Cuckoo. Is that word? Cuckoo. You don't go back and forth between. Should I? Well, let's see. I got to figure this out. I don't know if I do that, then this. There's no way you can figure this out. Knock it off. You don't have to do that. You don't have to torture yourself with should I and should not. You really don't. That doesn't mean you will stop suffering. That may have to go on for quite a while. You may have to look at your suffering, but you'll be able to do it directly. Am I promoting meditation or Buddhism? Probably somewhat. I can't help it. That's how I got on this seat, just through the help of my teachers, both of them. Yes, sir.
Bowing, it seems like in our culture, hope and passion have a almost desirable quality. What does it mean in Buddhism that hope and passion are poisons?
Well, passion doesn't mean that you don't want some spaghetti. So, if you want it, then why is that so funny? Because of that food we had that wasn't really spaghetti, that has that. What is that called?
Bolognese.
Bolognese. Okay, and that was delicious. Is that what you're laughing at? No, you weren't.
It was, the pot was right there.
Right in front of you. Yeah, wasn't that good? What was that question? Yes, sir.
What are hope and passion in the Buddhist tradition?
So hope. There's hope and fear. If you're afraid of something, And then you hope that whatever you're afraid of will go away. Or else you'll hope you'll get what you're lacking. Hope and fear are just traps. That steals your wisdom. I mean, they ambush you in the midst of the forest that you are caught in, called your mind stream. That's why you have to go in there. You're going to have to look at that. You may not do it in this lifetime. You may walk out of here and forget everything I'm saying. Should you do that? If that's what shows up, because whatever shows up is exactly what needs to occur. There's no right and wrong. This is a big misunderstanding. The whole world is running on that, trying to get control so that we can fix everything. How many times have you heard, we have to make sure this never happens again? You know, it's like you're going to stop life. It's crazy. Crazy.
Please bear with me because this isn't quite a fully formed thought, but I've been thinking a lot as you've been talking about how you've said a lot about therapy, and as someone who wants to become a therapist, I was thinking about and wanted to ask, what is the place of mental health or even mental illness in the Buddhist tradition?
Right here. This is mental health. This is we have several people who are students of mine, are therapists, and I highly encourage that. And not everyone's going to meditate, but if you're a therapist, it probably would be a good idea if you trained your mind so that you don't download your misunderstanding on not students, but clients that come to you that seem to have a similar thing. You don't want to necessarily say, "Oh, I understand just what you mean. I was treated the same way." Not a good idea, because it just makes mutual admiration society. Well, I didn't get a smile, so I missed the point. More about that. So I'm all for that. Be a therapist. That's one way you can actually even get paid. You guys still get paid? Client, Kelly, you getting any pay for all the therapy work you do? A little bit? Okay, she's getting paid. And she's a meditator. So it wouldn't have to be this kind. It could be something else. More about that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir.
Yoko Bowing. A question on YouTube from Charles D. Charles Bowing. What is the relation between Buddhist faith and knowledge? Thank you very much. Bowing.
Buddhist faith. So faith is different in Buddhism than it is in a theistic approach. Not better, not worse, not anything. It's just it's like trust, but it's not the kind of trust where you close off and no longer look at it and you just believe it. It's a kind of faith that is very much connected with your intelligence about watching, observing, and seeing what is happening and seeing what is developing in front of you and receiving it. So you have faith that as you go along, you begin to see more and more the fundamental teachings of the Buddha, which is life is suffering. It's difficult. You're not going to be able to get rid of suffering. And you might find a different, more intelligent, and even enlightened way of working with it. And also that nothing comes from its own side as an individual self or being. That is an illusion. And so I think to go back to the question, I'd have to switch it around a little bit. I'm not sure if this is how you meant it, but it's like I'm feeling that I don't know, because the question has some differentiation happening. I'm not blaming you for the question, but I'm just saying, could you, if you have the person still on the line, just tell me what you want to know rather than make it in some kind of a situation where I have to be smarter than I am. Yes.
Yoko Bowing. What makes us turn away from faith when we're looking right at it?
Turn away from faith?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't turn away from it. And I don't believe anything. I don't disbelieve in anything. I don't even believe in Buddhism. If I believed in Buddhism, then I'd have to practice it exactly like the Dalai Lama or the head of the Soto Shu in Japan were telling me to do it. And they don't have anything to say about what I'm doing. Who has something to say about what I'm doing? Whatever shows up. I get my understanding, as my teacher told me. Someone asked him once, well, now that your teachers, your gurus are dead, who is your guru? And he said, situations are my guru. And I would have to say the same thing. I don't plan anything. Yes,
Would part of this practice be considered intuition?
all of it.
All of it?
It's all receiving. Anything that arises in the mind stream is just receive it rather than lay something on top of it so it's easier to choke down or judge it or evaluate it or run it through some kind of a strainer of your concepts, your ideas, to see if it fits with the way you see things. Lauren? Good question. What was good?
Those are good bowing. I've heard you say trust yourself, which doesn't mean believe your thoughts.
Yes.
But trust the space in which things show up. What
Yes.
does it mean to trust the space?
It just means that don't fill up your feeling of not knowing with some kind of choices. Just have a willingness to not know what the hell's happening next. Give yourself a break. Sit around and just look at it, watch it. It's very difficult to do that unless you're a meditator, unless you're training yourself to sit down and watch the comings and goings of the mind. If you're taking what comes and goes in the mind and you're adding things onto it, it's like no matter what is served to you in terms of karma or your life, I say don't miss it. You want to put a bunch of condiments on it because you don't like that. You want more salt, you want more pepper, you want more hot sauce. Or you take parts of it out that don't belong to you. You shouldn't be served. This shouldn't be happening to you. I don't deserve this. You ever said that? I don't deserve this. Well, yes, you do. If it shows up in your mind, in your life, then you have it coming. And I don't mean you're to blame. It just means that the causes and conditions are absolutely impossible to trace. You can't find out where this came from. Probably came out of a tree. Where's the tree at now? And where's the person who made this? And where's the machinery that cut that out? And where are these? Look, not separate. You have to have hands to hold that up and even say something like that. All of this is dependent. There's no separate being anywhere. This is an illusion that you and I and the world is deluded by. And we're willing to torture and hurt people in order to get rid of our own suffering. It's heartbreaking to watch. So what should you do about that? Train your mind, find out who you are. Don't live another day without having an attitude to find out fundamentally who this is. This is where if there is a location, this is it. And it's not your heart necessarily. It's right here. Yes.
Does seeing like this intuition and this wisdom, seeing without necessarily labeling or assigning binaries, is this supposed to be more mentally easier or more mentally difficult? Like, do you put more mental energy into not doing this? Or
don't get me doing your words now.
I know, right?
I'll roll away. So what do you want to know? It's a great question. Can you just be succinct?
How much mental energy is it supposed to? Is there supposed to be, or is there?
It seems to go different ways, and it seems to be different for different people. Some people are extremely intellectual, and they have to think about everything. Buddhism is replete with all kinds of intellectual stuff, and we study it. We study material that's I don't know, how would you even describe it? It's just volumes and volumes. And then we take some material and go over and over it. My teacher's book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, I've been studying that with groups of people since 1975, at least once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a week, going through, reading it, talking about it. So am I getting close to what you're looking for? No, study. So, and sometimes it will be challenging, difficult, and it's good to study with others, study with a community. Yes.
So if this like labeling comes up, should I try to challenge it or should I just notice it?
Say it again, I'll listen.
So if this labeling or binary comes up, should I try to challenge it or just should I try to notice it for next time?
If I'm following what you're saying about the polarity stuff, binary, you're calling it, I would say just observe it. Everything that comes and goes. If you see what it is, you'll see that what looks like binary is not separate.
Mm-hmm.
Life and death, not 2 different things, 2 names for the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the world fights with it because we think that life is really good, and when you die, it's really bad or something. Not so. Nothing dies. Who you actually are can't die. What has not, if this has appeared, this can go away. This has appeared, it will go away. This probably sooner than most people's, because I'm old. But who you actually are can't go anywhere. And if you realize who you are, you've transcended this world, even though you're still wandering around in a body, wearing clothes and eating Cheerios. Do you eat Cheerios? Me too. Rarely, but once in a while. You're still, the illusion is still there, and you're participating. You're actually starting to dance in the illusion, because you dance and you actually enjoy. Maybe not a lot. Maybe your life is difficult. Maybe your body is sore. Maybe your health is really off. I have some really young students that have terrible health problems. The downside is they have that. The upside is that's probably what got them into doing sitting meditation. So receive, receive, receive. All the sense fields are meant to receive. Produce little. Don't produce much. Michael.
What are we actually?
Pardon me?
What are we actually?
If you use a word, which I would have to use, and this comes out of the teachings that I've been studying for a long time, we're just consciousness. But we don't really know what consciousness, like what the actual description of it. We know it shows up, this shows up in consciousness, vision, or it shows up in auditory. It shows up in touch. And it shows up in all these different ways, and receive and receive and receive. But there's no receiver. There's just consciousness. The illusion that there's a receiver, that's where the warfare comes from. So consciousness, eventually you will see, I can't guarantee it, because I don't know what kind of karma you have to deal with. You may have the karma that's going to take you, as I did. One student of mine was a student for a while and went right back into Roman Catholicism. Was that wrong? No, that's probably what he needed to do. Well, that's what he did. And so I've said, good luck. I hope that works. I hope that works for you. He's doing a lot of suffering. He needed to go back into the religion he was raised in. More? Yes.
Mike, how do we work with an incessant ego while we're on the path?
I didn't catch the whole thing.
How do we work with an incessant ego when we're on the path?
But it's the awareness that it's incessant. The downside is it's incessant. I just constantly feel full of myself, and I'm bumping into this, bumping into that, and I feel like I can't get out of this intense narcissism or self-centeredness. I dealt with that for years before I met my teacher. It's very, very painful. It makes you want to kill yourself. At least it did me. This person shouldn't live any longer. Because I met him, that did not happen. So kind of stuck with me. But it has to be seen. So the downside of what you're saying is you're describing something, it's incessant. It sounds terrible. It's just suffering. But the upside of that, we want to use duality to talk about it. You're aware of that. And many people are not aware of the incessant self-centeredness, and because they're able to get rid of that feeling by justifying it, by threatening others, hurting others, pushing others. If they have a lot of power, taking whole countries to war against others to kill innocent people. Of course, everyone's innocent and everyone's guilty at the same time. More?
No.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yoka bowing. I have a follow-up question on YouTube from Charles D. Can we say that Buddhism, or that Buddhist faith, has its roots in seeing clearly reality through mind training rather than a belief without proof? Charles Bowing.
If you wanted to generalize about that, you could do that. It's if you see just that description, probably won't. It might be satisfactory, but it won't. The fundamental kick in the teeth from Buddhism, you're going to have to see it through a teacher. If you don't have a teacher, it'll just be a set of concepts and ideas that might sound reasonable. Whereas the teacher will, if you give them permission, will help you see your true nature. Yes.
So I grew up Catholic. So when you say everyone's guilty and innocent at the same time, what do you mean by that? Because I guess when I think of it, the only thing I know is about sins and stuff. So, but what does it mean in the Buddhist tradition when you say that?
It's just a way of talking about the relative area is there, and we work with it. Some people are really mean and do terrible things, but we don't know what's behind all that. What kind of horrible things could have happened to them in their consciousness, in the consciousness in the 13th century, or how they've been treated. Sometimes people tend to trade around. Somebody is in this lifetime, torture somebody, and then they meet in another lifetime, and then the torture becomes the other person. Is this true? I don't know if it's true, but it definitely shows up in consciousness in that way, the polarization of it. You have to include the polarity in order to be able to understand it, rather than pick sides or picking and choosing. Part of it tends to add to the spinning, more confusion. Do you still practice? Okay. You don't.
No, I don't.
Oh, you guys have been swapping stories. Yes, hands up.
How can you have a pause without blame? Because you were talking about how when you are looking for things that you're like, oh, you're blaming.
Yes.
How can you find a cause of something without then
Yes.
blaming them?
Because the consciousness, if you train your mind, eventually the consciousness is just a rough, kind of a classical way of saying it, begins to expand. It doesn't have the center and the fringe that it has with an ego. I'm here and you guys are there. It starts to infiltrate, you could say, everywhere. It starts to show up everywhere you look. It becomes like a mirror. You can't really find a separate entity anymore. So therefore, you also cannot find first cause for anything. Just like if I hold this up, it might look like a simple event. Well, I have control. I can pick this up. I can put it down. I'm in charge. But I did not make this, nor did I make this, nor did I make the thoughts that are rising in the mind stream that help me to relate to you in terms of the question you seem to be asking. There's no creator of any of this. It is this Buddhist teaching is called shunyata, or emptiness. You have a further one? Mm-hmm.
It's kind of more of a practical question, but how can you have a teaching of Buddhism in your everyday life, like as a college student? How?
You would ask that person to be your teacher, and then people do that all the time. A lot of the people in this room. But I'm also saying, don't do anything unless you have to. Want to do this by yourself? Go ahead. I certainly couldn't have. I would not be sitting here if it weren't for my teachers. But I'm very, very tentative about trying to get you to do something you're not ready to do. You need to see it. You come. I function as a teacher. If someone comes to me and asks me, and then I tell them what that's about. This is what that means to me, and then do you agree to that? And then the person says yes, then I function as that person's teacher. And I would say, keep your agreements. Don't make any agreements unless you're going to keep them. So that's how it would happen. You already know that, though. You know you could come here, or you could go to other meditation groups anywhere. Talk to other teachers. What is your name?
My name's Nora.
Nora. Nora. Easier to spell than yours. Huh?
Just a bit.
Just a bit. What is your name again?
Tanis.
Tana.
Nis. You can break it down into like tan and is. That's how I remember it. We all gotta start somewhere.
My goodness. Tanis, what sign are you?
Virgo.
There's keeping track of stuff. Good. I'll take one final question, especially if there's one from any of your students out there that hasn't asked a question.
Susan Bowling.
Susan's a student.
So Sokuzan, I know you tell us that the most important thing we can do is to train our minds through the sitting practice of shikantaza.
Yes.
So could you reduce to or just a few words, what is the most important, I guess you'd say, concept that you're trying to teach us, bowing?
Whatever happens, this is the path. There's ground, path, and fruition. The ground is the suffering, the misery, the discontent, the fear that's happening in everyone's everyday life. And if you can manage to cover that up, you probably won't be here listening to me. You'll find something. You might just go bowling every day. You might get to be a tennis star where you don't have to think about anything because everybody loves you and they want to go to all of your tennis matches. And you know what I'm saying. I'm not taking anything away from people who do that, but I'm saying that will cover up your life if you are interested in the spiritual path. So coming back to square one, which is your question, I would say the most important thing I could say, if you're on the path, then the important thing to do is, of course, sitting meditation and return to the teacher, return to the teaching, And that's a lot of ways of describing that, and return to the community. You need the support of people who are on this path, even though they're all working with it in different ways. Sometimes it looks like some people say they're on the path and it doesn't look like it at all. And other people, it looks more like they're doing something in a conventional way. It's very complicated in that way. So coming back again to your question is just observe, just receive. This is why when you sit down and face a wall, you're training your mind to first see the truth in your own mind stream, so that when you look out, you see that your mind stream is everywhere. You can't see anything but your consciousness. But until that's seen, you'll think this is me and that's other. And this is where wars start. Conflict between myself and other, tension, me, and what I think, and them, and what they think. You have to see it. And so the most important concept, the way you're asking it, is just receive. Don't miss your life. Everything that happens in your life is supposed to happen. How's that?
Susan Bowing, that was pretty good. So I've seen you take that stick and hit a lot of things with it. I've never yet seen you hit a person with it, but you always say it's not real. This isn't real and that's not real. So what is real? Bowing.
Find out. You find out. You're not going to believe me. I can tell you what is real in words, but I wouldn't even ask you. I wouldn't be disrespectful to you by saying that I'll tell you what's real and what you should believe, and don't believe anything. Don't disbelieve anything, and don't ignore anything. And the practice seems to be seeing how you can't help but buy into this or sell that or push this or cover that up. We just constantly keep going around in circles like that. You find out. See what it is yourself.
Susan Bowing, but I hear you, but it's very hard when everything seems so real to believe that it's not real. Bowing.
I didn't say that. You caught yourself on your own hook. I said, don't believe it. Don't disbelieve it. When I say don't believe it, don't believe necessarily that it's real, and don't disbelieve it, and don't necessarily believe that it's not real. Take no position. When you take a position, you create all the other positions. When you take a position of me, you create all the other thems. Some you like and are friendly, and some, but everyone is confused. They are, everyone, even the people who are out there trying to help people and be nice and helpful. That's a misunderstanding. A big one. Don't waste your kindness by throwing it around so that you feel like you're being kind. Be kind here first. Make friends with this. If you haven't made friends with this, then you project that unresolved understanding out on the world, and you go to war with others. Don't do it. Very good. Thank you. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Shoto, and I am a monk at SokukoJi, where I am committed to training my mind under the guidance of my teacher, Sokuzan. We rely on your support for much of what we offer here. This includes building projects to create space for full-time and part-time practice residents. Thank you for your help.